Well, hello everybody. Welcome to a Father's Day discussion.
Wow.
It is Father's Day today. We're celebrating. Cheering
Yeah.
fathers. Praise the Lord. Yeah. They had they had a great Mother's Day series of videos coming out.
They sure did.
They did wonderful videos,
Yeah.
and we took control because men don't get that much love on Father's Day, but we gonna level up on the fathers today, boy.
All right now.
Okay.
We gonna do it.
That's good.
Don't be getting no just socks and draws
Yeah, don't
today.
send no draws. No, that ain't problem they get.
Right.
Brown, black, and blue.
No, that's problem.
Right. And just a tie and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the big piece of chicken.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
I know that's right.
Help us out some.
Yeah, I know that's right.
So you guys do us a favor, share as much as you can, whatever platform you're on, Facebook, Periscope, YouTube. Please do us a favor and share as we talk about fatherhood today,
Wow.
celebrating the fathers, talk about our fathers too.
Yeah.
And all four of us are fathers also.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we can share some stuff. We were joking before the video started. Brother George James and I are the young crew. Our kids are under 10 years old. Bishop Evans, Bishop Michael Anthony got grown children,
Yeah.
grandchildren.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So there are going to be times where both of us going to shut up and let the two of them talk.
Lord have mercy.
Already.
Right, school us on fathering, and we might get into some spiritual fathering too.
Sure.
Because at the same time, Bishop is seen as is not seen, but is our spiritual father also.
Yeah.
Yes.
And talk about how the spiritual father can help make up for the issues of a natural father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can talk about that also. So again, you guys share as much as possible, and let a father know, let a man know to tune in as we talk about fatherhood.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bishop, because you are
The oldest one here.
no, I wasn't even going to say that. I wasn't going to say that because you are His Grace.
Okay.
You're Episcopal.
It's a nice way to call me old.
Nature.
Yeah, I get it.
And
Next thing you be calling me a general.
the general on the faith.
Yeah.
Our spiritual father.
Yeah. All real good terms for old. Go ahead.
We defer to you to start on. There's so many different definitions of fatherhood.
Yeah.
And in your eyes, kind of let's talk about, we'll start with you, talk about fatherhood to you. What does that mean? Your experiences as a father, your experiences as a son with your father, and kind of let's start the conversation there with honing what a father is.
Yeah.
And how God sees that.
I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think the definitive lines on what a father is are being challenged. It's almost as though that having a standard as a dad is inappropriate pressure on those you're trying to raise. The culture now is got this hands-off type of, I brought you into the world, but you develop yourself and make your own mistakes and all that kind of stuff. I think that the challenge is being a father who has a standard, and maintaining that standard in front of your children so that they have a platform from which to develop, rather than going through the injury of discovering 10 identities by the time they get to be 20.
Mm-hmm.
I think the traditional fathering model is being challenged every day. And some of the problems that our children are having are being blamed on the fact that you had a standard for them. And so you have to be able to father and not be so popular with culture. And I think that our role is to produce a viable, sane, reasonably functioning adult from that child that has been birthed into our lives. And I think that has become more of a struggle and more of a challenge based on the cultural suggestions that change every 30 or 45 days as it relates to our children's identity, priority, and everything else. I think there's I think we battle more now in a much more complicated world. But I think we still have to, especially as Christian fathers, God almost demands that we have a standard to give our children a platform from which to operate. Train up a child in which he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart. That to me is God saying, lay the standard in and make sure that they can hear your voice in their heads when they're out doing their thing and making their other choices, so that when trouble does come, they can say, my dad told me, my dad tried to tell me, my dad had a conversation with me. I think fathers today cannot be accused of not having said something.
Yeah.
We can't have a child that says, my dad never told me that.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So we have to kind of, it's not a risk. We have to be unpopular at times with our opinions.
Yeah. That's good. So George, from you do marriage and family therapy, from your experiences with talking with families and fathers, what are your experiences, if you can share a few with fatherhood and how they affect children psychologically, emotionally, sociologically also?
Yeah, a lot of, what Bishop said, I see, right? Like, who are you today? Who do you want to be as a father, as a man? There's so many different challenges. And one of the things I was thinking about is this ability to be hybrid, right? Like to have a standard, but still have some flexibility. I think that many years ago, it was one way, right? It was harsh. It was, you're not going to hear much. There's a guideline. And then it shifted to like, oh, everything is okay. But there needs to be some blend of both of those, at least in my opinion, where there's a standard, but there's enough emotion and openness and flexibility to be there. Yeah. And I've seen that where, I work with men who are dealing with their children who are testing the boundaries, and they're trying to figure out what's the best way, because the old school was like, you just hit them, and that doesn't work. Right?
That doesn't work anymore? You said that doesn't work?
Way. Not you punch a 17-year-old in the mouth, it might go down a little differently.
Right.
I'm not saying that people aren't doing it, but you have to have at least some other options. You might end up with that one, but you might have some other options.
You have to be a conversational father, not a dictatorial. You kind of have to know when to drop the hammer and when to sit down and say, okay, tell me what you were thinking. One way doesn't make it anymore, but no standard at all is the wrong way to go, I think.
Absolutely. You guys has brought up something really good about the old school way. Old school father was just work, didn't say much, sat in the house, but was emotionally unavailable. And George, you kind of hit on that, the balance of having that standard like Bishop was talking about, and then both of y'all kind of brought in the relational part too. Yep. So kind of talk to us a little bit more about the psychological effects of a young man who doesn't have an emotionally open father, if I can say it like that.
Yeah. At least from what I've seen is that your father is the person that you tend to try to reflect yourself off of. And throughout life, you have so many questions of who you are. Am I doing it right? How should I go about things? And if that father is not emotional or open or willing to share, you then don't know if you're mirroring the right image or doing the right thing. And so you start to seek it out in other places. Yeah. And sometimes that could be in a relationship. Sometimes that could be in other men. Sometimes that could be just in doing the wrong thing. And so if you have someone that you can talk to, that can hold you, that can hug you, can kiss you, can talk through stuff, it allows you to feel like there's more than one dimension to being a man, being a person, and eventually partner, father, person in society.
That's good.
Do you think that I think one of the hardest parts of fathering is when your kid decides you don't know anything. and to make it through that season with them when they're only seeing your wisdom when they're in deep trouble that they can't dig themselves out of. And you have to find a balance between watching them bump their heads and preventing them from bumping their heads, depending on what the outcome is going to be. And I think that's there's no format for that. It's a moment by moment, incident by incident judgment call.
Right.
You have to play it by ear.
Yeah, you do.
You got to play it by ear. You really do.
Do I step in now? Don't I? It's just, and I think when grandkids come, you get a new kind of concern. I've been accused around here that I've gotten soft since my grandchildren came.
We all agree.
They told me they wouldn't have gotten away with that before challenge and renegade. So I think it does give you another perspective, but also I'm not sure you have the energy when you get to be my age to challenge every point. You start really choosing your battles.
That's interesting. Bishop Anthony, you have anything you want to share on that at all?
Well, first of all, I'm the young man who grew up watching the wrong model, because I was in and out of bars at the age of 5 and 6 with my father.
Wow.
When people say they grew up in the street, I question that, because I've been in atmospheres with, guns, knives, and different things taking place back on Lansdowne Avenue in West Philly Overbrook. So I've been in the street for a very long time. I've seen the ins and outs of what goes on in those atmospheres. So I felt very comfortable in that atmosphere when I began to grow up and get older. It wasn't something that was foreign to me. I've seen the man who runs women, because my father used to do that kind of stuff. I see the man who gets in trouble in the street and then has other guys that come and gang up and come around and help to collaborate against individuals. I've been in that atmosphere. So when you talk about a standard, for me, I had to learn a standard. You know what I'm saying? Because for a long time, I was trying to figure out who I was. Now, I always say that my mother was the best man I ever knew, because I'm the product of a single mother.
Okay.
But my father is the one I really wanted more of his attention growing up. And because they had gotten a divorce and all this other stuff, money came into play. And I think that, we start talking about money, start talking about child support. So his thing was, I shouldn't have to do anything else but give child support. Wow. So at one point we were walking up and down streets together. That's the wrong model, but still I had the confidence that came from a father. Because when you have a father, that helps to build that confidence. You start to understand your identity, if you would, as it relates to who your father is. You know what I mean? So out there, that was my dad. I had the utmost confidence when I was 5, 6 years old, but then at 7, that was taken from me. So now, because he no longer wants to connect with me, all because of $30-some a week, that's what I give your mother, then now all of a sudden I'm on my own. So I think the standard thing now, for me, I wanted to do better than that. But it took a long time for me to come to that realization.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It took a long time. It took several years through school and whatnot and a lot of trouble before I finally realized I have to do something better. And then, once you have a child, I had a son, it was like, I don't really want him to be anything like me. I don't want him to have those same experiences anyway.
Right.
So I decided to do something different. And that's where, the biblical model came into play for me. You know what I mean? I really had to learn because there was no solid role model for me anywhere. I always had what they call, quote unquote, I had old heads. You know what I mean? I had old heads because I was a younger guy that hung around with a bunch of older guys all the time. So I learned how to make money. I learned how to, of course, to run women, all that other kind of stuff, play sports, and you learn how to, hold your hands if you had to. But I learned things from older men in the street. I didn't learn anything from my father as it relates to my older years. In fact, he was absent when I really needed him. So yeah, that whole model thing is real important. You know what I mean? Just having that person that not just tells you what to do, but can show you how to do it. And I think, Bishop, you said it. We're talking about playing it by ear. So you have to kind of you kind of use your wisdom now. You're older now, so you use more wisdom. You know what I mean? You've been around now. I didn't call you old. I said you're older now. You use more wisdom.
I heard you. I heard you. I heard the shade. I heard the shade.
No, but listen what you said though, and I think it's real critical because I can't treat every issue the same way.
No,
I can't treat every issue the same way, and sometimes sometimes I might have wanted to do what Brother George was saying. You can't bring down the hammer on them. You just can't do that. You know what I mean? This generation can't handle that. You know what I mean? They don't really
because
see love in
we haven't reminded them that it's available occasionally.
it.
Every now and then.
I love it. Yeah, I like the way you worded that. I will use that now.
So
It's available.
right. Can we dive into an emotional topic that may help bring some healing?
Okay.
I've heard of men say, and I think you mentioned this in Dare to Be a Man and Heal Without Scars, that the lack of love from a father growing up makes it hard to accept love from other men and father figures sometimes.
Absolutely.
When we all became fathers, was there an exposure of a wound when your children came in the scene? Because to me, it feels like you're there to parent them, but it also develops you in the process too.
Yeah.
So if you didn't have that love growing up, did you find it hard to give that same love, or was it an easy thing to do?
I learned something extremely quickly in the beginning, and that was, if I start becoming what I lacked, I become rapidly healed of it. So I had that father wound from my father, but the moment I became one, I had already decided that I was not going to be like my dad. And when I actually could become a father, it started healing that wound very rapidly. And I dedicated myself. It might have been the wrong model, but I dedicated myself to being the opposite of my father.
Sure.
And he was. For some reason, I thought of the fact my dad was an amateur hypnotist. And one day we were at his house and he was, telling me he wanted to hypnotize me. And of course, my will's always been strong. And it took him a minute. And just when I started to go under, I realized I didn't trust him.
Wow.
And I snapped myself out of it.
Wow.
And he looked at me like, you're supposed to be under by now.
Yeah.
But I didn't trust him enough to allow him to do that.
Wow.
And that spoke to me a whole lot.
Wow.
And my children may disagree with me, but they trust me implicitly. They at the end of the day, they know I'm going to be who I am.
Yeah.
To them, right? Even within discipline, even when they force me to be something to them I don't want to be.
Yeah.
They know at the end of the day, in the back of their mind, push comes to shove, I get in trouble, I can call that guy.
Wow.
And he's going to be there.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. When my wife was pregnant with our first our daughter, I was excited and nervous about just being a parent and what am I going to do and all the bumps and all the decisions I have to make. Then when my wife was pregnant with our son, I found there was a different nervousness I had around am I going to train him to be the young man and man he should be? What are my deficits? What are the things I need to do? And it really made me think about all the ways that I think about myself. And I was still in the process of accepting the type of man I am, and that is okay to then be that model for my son. And when, just thinking about my own father, I'll share the story that to me was a changing moment for me. I was coming back from college and I saw my cousin, who was 9 years younger than me, kiss my father. And it hit me where I was like, I don't kiss my dad.
Wow.
And I was like, my dad and I, we would say love each other all the time, but there wasn't kiss. There wasn't that level of affection. And so I decided, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna kiss my dad. And I came up with this whole plan. I was dropping them off at the airport. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna kiss him and run. And I got all hyped up and nervous. And then I went to kiss my dad, and I missed his cheek, I kissed his ear, and it was just all this stuff because I wanted to be affectionate and change that with my dad. And because of that, going back to what Bishop said of just running towards those things that are gaps, I kissed both of my children multiple times every day. right?
Absolutely.
It is a common thing with me and my son, me and my daughter, that they're going to feel multiple levels of affection. As a father, as a man, they're going to see that, and they see me do that with their mom, right? So it's just all levels that I wanted to change that I didn't have with my own
You
dad.
know what's weird? As trifling as my dad was, he was always a hugging, kissing father.
Wow.
Wow.
So I never lacked that. He just, you know, when he was sober, he was a wonderful guy. But when he was drinking, which was every single day,
Yeah,
you know, if
man.
I caught him, you know, but one thing I had to give him, he was always an affectionate father. So I never had that issue from my dad as far as being embraced. He'd kiss me on the cheek when he saw me. You know, he was that way.
Hmm.
But he left so much other things to be desired.
Yeah.
What I realize now, I never grew up wanting that from somebody else.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
A whole lot of other stuff, but not that being affectionate.
Wow.
And I notice now among our young boys, they're not used to their fathers being affectionate with them.
Yes.
Mm.
And now they run to me for a hug because they don't get it from their natural father.
Yep.
Wow.
It's surprising how many men, even in general, we talk in general purposes, they're afraid to say "I love you" to another man
Absolutely.
because they either feel like it's not masculine
Yeah, it's
or
a
they
stigma.
never had it's a stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Where, you know, for us, we're used to, hey man,
Oh, yeah.
love you, and hey, love you.
Yeah.
It's normal.
Yeah.
You know? But I think not having that growing up does something. Now, I was the reverse, George. My son, I was hyped when we found out he was having a boy,
Oh yeah.
hugging them, holding them all the time.
I was hyped.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was.
I started estate planning.
Right. But my daughter, on the other hand, that was a different story. You know, she's very huggy, holdy, emotional. And sometimes I'm like, I just want to sit here and watch TV. And this morning, just lay down. So she want to lay under the blanket and we watch TV together. I'm like, girl, I was sitting up eating. And she don't care. But she's pulling me to be more emotionally available.
Absolutely.
You know, in ways that I wasn't demanded of before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, her mother, you know, of course, she got all that emotional side, but it's different with, maybe you can help me with this. It's different, maybe not online with everybody to see, maybe a personal conversation. You have my guts all out on the world.
No, this is an intervention. That's what this is.
Right.
He gonna need some intervention if he says some of this.
Right. But it's not that I don't love her. I care about her. I hold her. We do all that stuff. She would never know it, but it's pulling another emotional side of me as a father out.
Sure.
Yeah.
My son is not as demanding emotionally as she is. And I found it interesting how it's making me develop as a man, as a father.
Yeah.
And she's pulling.
Yeah.
I think we have to demonstrate stuff.
Yeah.
You know, last night when I got to the house, Raina's a big girl, and people have stopped picking her up. So, but I'm contending I'm going to pick her up until I can.
Yep.
So I scooped her up last night, and that was the biggest reward she could have had.
Yep.
She said, "Nobody picks me up anymore."
Oh, wow.
She said that to me last night.
Wow.
And I realized that was what she missed.
Yep.
Which is why, you know, if I don't care what I'm watching, I let her lay on me whichever way she wants to lay. Because of her size, people tend to tell her, move over, sit next to me, don't lay on me. And she's not a fat girl, she's just a big girl.
Yeah.
You know, and I realized that we have to demonstrate that to our children.
Absolutely.
Or they grow up lacking something.
Yeah.
Well, when my son was born, I thought, when my son was born, I think what happened for me was my maturity process began.
Okay.
Because I was still in a lifestyle that wasn't going to be good for him. Now, keep in mind, I have 3 sons. I don't have daughters, so y'all can have that. All right. Y'all got that. All right, you got barrettes and all the other kind of stuff. I would have guns at the door if I had daughters. I can see it right now.
Okay.
But nonetheless, my first son was in 11th grade, and I only held him one time because I didn't believe he was mine. But then later on, when he came into my life, I looked at him, I was like, that's me right there. Right. So, but then I had another biological son that for 2 years, and for the first 2 years of his life, I was still trying to get myself together. I was determined that, number one, I couldn't stay out here like this, because immediately what went through my mind was, man, I remember what it was like when I didn't have my father around. And I decided, listen, I got to do something better. And I wanted to be there in his life. And we've always been affectionate. That whole carry him, hold him, all that kind of stuff. I took him everywhere I went. So with the one, I didn't get a chance to share that with him. Now, that's difficult now to try to fill in that gap for the one that I had in the beginning. That's been really difficult, not for him, but for me, because I feel like, listen, I wasn't there for you. You know what I mean? And like, so in the back of my mind, I think, well, what can I really offer him now? You know what I mean? So he fights through that because he wants to know who I am. He wants to be connected with me. So I think that, when you first have your children, it affects us all a certain kind of way if you're willing and wanting to be responsible, because I wanted to be responsible. Yeah. And that whole wound from my past, I didn't want to have that to be relived in another generation, to tell you the truth. Yeah. Because that addiction thing was really nasty for me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It really took me down a rabbit trail, and I didn't want my kids to have to go through that. So, yeah.
I think you brought up something. We can probably discuss this. My biggest fear in life, honestly, is not failing as a leader, a pastor, or anything. My biggest fear is being a failure as a father. I don't want my kids to experience what I did. Yeah. So like Bishop, I'm home. I got them a lot. I hate when people say you babysitting your child. I'm not babysitting my child. No, you can't. So like you said, hug them, hold them, talk to them, spend time with them. Even when I don't feel like it, they'll never know that I want to sit down and go take a nap.
Right.
My biggest fear, I don't know about y'all, is to fail as a father. If I fail as a father, I feel like I failed at life.
I think that my thing is that I will not be accused of not having done what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For someone for one of my children to say you didn't do everything you could do, they would have to lie.
Yeah.
Right.
At the end of the day, and you have to be careful about comparisons. People would have considered me a good dad, and I could have done 70% less than what I did. But I had a standard for myself. Mm-hmm. I've had contemporaries come to our church, and the younger guys can't get over the fact that my grandchildren are on the front row with me. The older guys, some of them are uncomfortable with all that activity on the row. But to me, they have to be there. Yeah. Because my position can't prevent me from parenting in church.
Right.
And I think it's just a decision you make that you want to be present. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No one would blame me for not running my kids to school every day. Nobody would blame me for that. Nobody would blame me for not keeping Raina the first 2 years of her life 4 days a week while her mother was in school. No one would blame me for that. But I had a standard for myself that I'm going to be present in this child's life.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be in the room when she was born, I can't go absent now that she's here.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, Nick, to your point, that's the thing that could get me any day. If I know I have to go work, even like during, this COVID, right? My office is in the basement. If I have to go down and my kids say like, oh, we want to spend time with you, I'm like, come on, I got to work. But at the same time,
I make the adjustment.
don't let they want to be with me because I don't want the void of them feeling like dad's not around or dad didn't spend time, because I know how that could hurt. My dad was traveling back and forth to Jamaica for months. And so I know what that felt like to not have him around. So that could be the trigger point. And then I have to, go through my own self-talk to say like, I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm present, but I also know I got to work, because that allows them to do a whole bunch of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there were times when I would, depending on what I was doing, if I was researching stuff, I'd have them in the office with me. Yeah. If I was writing stuff, I couldn't have them in there. But since researching takes a lot more than writing, they ended up spending more time. I would, they're in the office with me. They're doing their thing. It looks like romper room in there. It doesn't look like a professional office. Stuffed animals, and I got a kids art museum in the corner.
Right.
I got all this weird looking art. It looks like I was high when I did it or something. But there you go.
You got some stuff up.
I don't know why they want it in your workspace, but they want it in your workspace.
Yeah.
Because they realize that's where you spend your time.
Yeah.
But I think you have to make well-defined decisions to make sure that they understand what presence is all about.
Yes, sir.
Not the idea of it, but the actuality of it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And you guys are right. You know, plenty of times we wanted to start reading a book, watching TV, or doing something, and it's like, can you come watch this with me? Okay. Watching Frozen for the 100th time.
Sir. Yes, sir.
And sit there like we just watched it for the first time.
And you know the music.
You know the music?
You know the music.
And the bad part, you start singing with them.
Yeah.
Or I don't have those issues yet.
You start singing it without them. That's what happens.
Like,
I don't have those issues yet. They're still telling me about stuff. I'll be like, who's that? I don't know who that is. I don't have those issues yet.
I remember being in the hotel room in Dallas, Texas, by myself. I'm flipping through the channels, and Sesame Street comes on. And I'm watching Sesame Street by myself. I got so used to watching it with them.
Yep.
I'm sitting out, it's something like 10 minutes in, I'm like, why are you watching this? I'm like, the kids ain't here with you, but you get used to a pattern of presence, like you said, and not just a body in the house.
Yeah.
But emotional availability, psychological availability. Present while you're present.
Yeah, not present and absent, but present and present.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a real issue now that a lot of the guys, when I counsel some of the young men in my church, and they talk about the child support they pay and how they pay for, daycare and all this other stuff, then I have to ask them, do you spend time with your child? You know what I mean? Because they are under the assumption that just because I pay for this or I pay for that, I'm present. But you're not present. You're not present. You're present financially, but you're not present with your life, with you're not there at things. You know what I mean? You've left the raising process up to their mother. So you have to do more than just feel like I'm paying for them to go to school, or I pay for their school clothes and that kind of thing. They have to do more than that.
I think something that has to be overcome by men is just because you're detached from the woman does not automatically detach you from your children.
Yep.
And that you have to work out a system where you have availability to your kids, even though you and the mother are not getting along.
Yeah.
The next thing I think that is highly offensive is that a court has to tell you to support your kids. I find that to be just so unmanly. That you need a court order to do what's right. And conversely, I've had guys that think because they buy a pack of diapers a month, that makes them a good dad.
Wow.
I don't, and I think it's because maybe generationally, the generation before me passed down fatherhood to us, but I'm not sure my generation passed it down to this generation that's coming now.
Yeah, that's true.
I think the 30-something fathers didn't know how to be examples. The 40-something fathers didn't know. So you got a whole crew of guys coming up now that think fatherhood is more in style than it is in substance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think I've heard something like that in terms of like the baby boomer generation was so focused about the future and making money that they didn't, and they were also pretty loose on parenting. So then you that's when the whole participation awards started coming in, right? Where you're like, you got a trophy just for showing up. And I think like some of those things obviously need to be thought about and reworked. And some people are still figuring it out for themselves.
That's when the quality time lie was birthed. You can't call an hour a week quality time.
Right? No,
not at all.
Come on. You can't call it that.
Yeah, it's not at all.
So that lie started to actually rule or give an excuse for not spending any time with your kids.
Yeah.
We spend quality time. How much time is that? 2 hours on Thursday. Oh,
that ain't no time.
Really?
That's not time.
Really?
That's not time.
How many hours a week do you go to the gym? Oh man, I'm in the gym 4 days a week, 2 hours a shot. Oh, okay. That's quality time.
Right. I don't know about y'all. It would drive me crazy to be away from my kids like that.
Yeah.
Even when I go away now, it's
Mhm.
harder being away now with them when they came into the scene, on the scene. And, you know, just you're so used to being with them, hugging them, holding them, watching TV, doing stuff. Being away from them can be a relief at times to get some sleep.
Sure.
Praise the Lord.
Absolutely.
But you feel the challenge sometimes of missing your kids and wanting to get home to spend time with them.
I think for me, it like if I'm on the road for some days during the week and it's school time, I'm so busy and so focused in the flow of the schedule that I don't understand the stress that goes along with getting them up and getting them to school, picking them up, and all that driving and stuff. I don't notice until I'm not doing it.
Okay.
And then I realize, wow, that takes a lot to do.
Yeah.
In addition to everything else you're doing.
Yeah.
If it was all I did, if I was one of those grandpops that was sitting at home waiting for something to do, it might be something different. But because I'm doing all that and getting home at 3 o'clock in the morning from preaching on Sunday night and getting up at 6 to get them out on Monday morning, you know, you don't know how much it takes out of you until you're doing it.
Yeah.
But then it's the necessity of it and the opportunity of it that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, you know, I'm amazed at the random things, or what feels like random, that happens when you clock a certain minute, right? Like when you go back to the quality time, you do an hour or two, you think you put your time in when you didn't, and nothing necessarily happens. But when you put in a few hours, just a random conversation that you didn't start, or now you get to like learn or teach or be a guide. Like there's conversations that have come up that I'm like, that felt completely random. But if I wasn't in the car with you, I wouldn't have been able to have that conversation.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I used to spend that kind of time with my boys because my boys are out the house. I'm sorry you have what you guys are dealing with. I'm waiting for mine to leave. Praise the Lord, just one more to go. But nonetheless, I used to spend time with my kids in the evening. I'm the one that cooked for them. My boys sat at the table with me because my wife would come home late. So I always cook for them, and we would have conversation at the table. And then I was the one that had to do homework. Come on, let's get ready to go outside, because I tried to keep them away from video games as much as possible. I wanted them to be active. So we were always in some kind of sports, so they were always in the car with me. And that conversation thing shows up at the craziest places.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm getting Dairy Queen, then all of a sudden, so Dad, you know, some girl tried to kiss me today. Okay. Okay. You're 10. Let's get into it. You know what I mean? Or I used to allow them to do things that their mother wouldn't allow them to do. I would teach them how to ride their bike, go up to the store, cross the street with the bike, and eventually, when I thought they could handle it, let them do it on their own. Mom comes home, Dad, let me ride up. I can do it on my own. Since when? Well, that's something we've been practicing while you weren't around. But just those are the things we would do in private. You know what I mean? Even when I got saved and finally got serious with God, I used to pray early in the morning. So I would wake my kids up.
You're talking about like 2 weeks ago, right?
Listen, I opened myself up for that. That's okay. I knew it was coming. George, I knew it was coming. That's all right.
You do it all the time.
You notice I dodged it like this now. Right? But I used to take them in my prayer closet with me. And it didn't matter if they stayed asleep, but I used to pray in front of them. I wanted them to see that, this is what real men do. I mean, I didn't just do a lot of explanation, but I did some illustration. I mean, I brought them at what we call in the yoke now.
Anthony, let me before I forget, because I am the oldest and I forget stuff.
Yes, sir.
Talk about how challenging it is after you have modeled that spiritual model, and to watch them stray away from that.
Here's what I feel, and I'll be real blunt if I can, to a certain degree. You put all your effort into trying to get your children to be to get them to be much better than you are, to achieve much more than you've ever achieved. They actually achieve it, and then all of a sudden, they do a total opposite. One does the opposite of what I showed them. The other has turned the opposite of what I am. where I used to be the individual who you came to, but now all of a sudden you're no longer connecting with me. I haven't found out how to manage that or why that happened. To tell you the truth, that's still a mystery to me, because one thing I prided myself in was being a really good father. Now, I always say this, that I would be satisfied in death because I knew what I did for them in life. I would be satisfied in that because I put all that I had into making sure that my kids not only had everything, I was present, um, there at everything I possibly could be, except for when I started pastoring the church. Pastoring kind of kept me away from certain things, but I was there. So I think that, when you start talking about that, Bishop, it's almost a mystery. I can't even put my finger on it. As much as it hurts to know that you've done all you can do, and then all of a sudden the person that you fed and did all this for now snaps at you, and you're looking at them like, wow, do you remember when? Do you remember when it was time for this? And I just got off of work, working third shift, and I took you to go do that. I stayed at the game with you all day. Do you remember that? Do you remember us going to the pizza shop afterwards? Do you remember that? You know what I mean? As if you did nothing at all. It almost feels like sometimes that you did nothing at all. Like it wasn't appreciated at all. I don't know if I gave too much, or if I did too much, or what. I don't really understand it sometimes. But all I know is it is very challenging, especially as a pastor now, right? Because your kids aren't supposed to have those issues,
Right.
quote unquote, because
Yeah.
you the man of God. So
Right.
that's not supposed to happen in your family. But what I've come to find out is happening in my family first.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
That's true. George, have you ever dealt with situations like that? Have you counseled families who've been in those situations that we just talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the whole list, right? Where there's a divorce, there's how do you co-parent, how do kids who go off and do their own thing, how I think Bishop mentioned it earlier, like how do you be calm and patient and enough when your child is doing something you don't want or don't like or don't agree with, and finding the right words or method to still stay connected with them, because like even what Bishop Anthony was saying, like you could get so hurt from that, and one of the reactions when we're hurt is just to say like, all right, I'm done with you, or I'm going to back away. And sometimes we're actually being pushed or called to just stay in it. And as one of the two on the panel with younger kids, that's something that like that makes me nervous. I don't want that, right? I don't want to like pour so much into it, and then one day like you look at me sideways, like I got a rap sheet of everything I've done,
Yeah.
right?
It makes you wonder what you did wrong.
Yeah.
Immediately I begin to say, well, what did I do wrong? You know what I mean? But now, because I have a spiritual father, that's where this came into play. I have a spiritual father that helped me walk through that thing.
Yeah.
Because, somebody had to help me adjust my mind, because I was going into that place of defeat, all because I didn't see the fruit anymore. You know what I mean? Look, like I had one season, I had great fruit, and then all of a sudden it didn't produce again. And I thought maybe it's the way I planted it. But
I
yeah.
think sometimes we fail to um, we it is dangerous for us to deny the reality in those that we love. And I think if you guys can get your head around this, when our children act like other people, it tends to cause us to wonder if we did something wrong or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's difficult for us those of you guys got younger kids and they don't show it in this level, but it's difficult for us that have older kids to fathom that our children do not know how to be cared for.
Yep.
It's difficult to accept that your child could be unappreciative of what you did
Yeah.
and have a entitlement attitude rather than a thankful attitude. I think that's challenging for a parent that has tried to be responsive, and tried to do whatever he or she could do.
Yeah.
And I think for dads, I think that I think fathers that are sacrificial sacrifice so much that children don't think there's a limit to what you'll do. And then when they hit the bottom of your well, it's unexpected.
Mhm.
Wow.
But because they don't, it's like expecting God's long suffering to mean that it's eternal suffering.
Right.
There is a place where God says, okay, there is an answer to my long suffering. There's a limit to it. There's a shelf life for it. And I think for even for our children, they have to know the limit of where they can push you.
Yeah. Wow.
To when they force you to change where they're concerned.
Wow.
To protect everybody else.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. So that, right.
It's a hard
Next, right?
Yeah,
it's a hard decision.
that's very, very challenging. It's got to be.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some realness here. Well, we all been talking about real, but let's take it a little deeper too. What happens when you see you and your children, positive and negative? Like I can see me in my kids, good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter has it a certain way. My son has it a certain way, and guiding. Sometimes I don't know about y'all. When y'all counsel parents, the one that the parent is the hardest and the craziest on is usually the one that's just the most like them when the parent hasn't resolved their own issue. When the parent has unresolved issues and they see that same thing in their child, they're crazy with that one and very liberal with the others.
Mm-hmm.
How do you navigate when you see that thing in your child to steer them away from that bad part of you in a positive way, if I can put it like that?
When I've counseled people who actually see themselves in their children, the first principle of our conversation is that if you can identify yourself in your child, there's almost no one on the earth who's better to converse with them and deal with them in their issue than you are. If you're willing to admit, this is a negative side of me, I see it in my child, I know how I should have how I should have been talked to. I can talk to my child because I have an affinity with that child.
Yes.
I think, but that takes a whole lot of admission on our part, rather than attack you in the other person.
Yeah.
You start, you start ministering to you in the other person.
Yes.
And I think that can help with conversation, with understanding the moods, thought process, because you went through it, you're seeing it in yourself, and you can kind of go back to your own history and say, okay, this is really like me here.
Yeah.
So let's have this conversation.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it happens for me in a couple ways. Where one, looking at myself, and then my profession, and then the intersection of that. And so the good part is when I look at my kids, I see their creativity at such a young age that I didn't recognize my creativity until much older, and it wasn't released until much older. Or even the athletic part of me wasn't released until much older. I could see that in my kids, and then be able to help them, or even just to just be adventurous.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, especially being a therapist, I can see anxiety and I can see depression or things that could lead to those things, and try not to be hyper focused on those things.
Mm-hmm.
Try not to be so overwhelmed by those things that I myself get anxious and worried beyond what I need to. So trying to pull myself back a lot of times to just say, let's just ride this out. Let's give them some structure, some boundaries, but let's ride this out, because if not, I could start tripping, and then that causes an even greater reaction.
Do you think, George, that is, I find that I have to intentionally not be the counselor overtly when I'm talking to my kids?
Yeah, that's everybody in my life.
I gotta on purpose be father and human being, and not allow position influence my conversation all the time. Although some of what you know as a counselor and some of what I know as a counselor can't help but get in your conversation, but I think it's the way we apply it. You know, I don't think our kids need to feel like they're being psychoanalyzed.
No, that's a really bad experience. I think what I try to do, like even in this conversation, I learn and I take it on, and then I try to implement what I've heard from other people. I'm like, all right, I'm going to try that. I'm going to do that. And then, yeah, of course, there are ways that I'm like, you know, let's deep breathe, or let's try this other stuff. Let's identify these feelings, right? But then there are other times like, all right, let's just go shoot some hoop. You know, let's go outside and play. And so try not to make everything so deep, because everything isn't so deep.
No.
And not wanting them to experience me that way.
Wow. Bishop Anthony, you got something you want to chime in on that at all?
Well, as it relates to what goes on with my kids, or what when I saw in my children myself, I thought maybe I needed to create a different structure. Created some structure, because a lot of the things that I experienced was because of a lack of structure. I'm raised by a single mother, but I was free and wild, you know. Now, when my sons began to experience depression, and those are things that I used to battle, that was a different story. Now I had to have a real conversation with them, and it was hard trying to pull that out of them to get them to identify that this is where they were at. You know what I mean? So the way that I did that was I was real about where I was. I shared some things that I failed in, and the reason why I didn't want them to fail in the same area, and it seemed to kind of open up the dialogue as it relates to certain areas and whatnot. And watch this. The whole thing for me was I didn't want my kids to be addicts like I was. You know what I mean? For me, that was the number one priority. We can't do this again. My father was an alcoholic. You know, he died by himself with some kind of liver disease and whatnot. I turned into something else, doing a different kind of drug. All I thought was, I can't let these guys go this direction. Now, the problem now is I have one that's in that direction. You know what I mean? That's out there in that life. And, you know, I hid all that from them. They never saw that. That wasn't a part of what they experienced. And I'm trying to figure out, well, you know, how do I help you to understand that this is, you know, you're going down a road that you're not going to be able to come back from immediately. This is a long road, and the road back is harder, you know. But I think I just opened up a lot. I talked a lot, kept trying to talk, kept trying to tell them what the areas that I had failed in, and I wasn't afraid to tell them that, because at that point, those things were evident. People knew about it, and you know, I wanted them to hear it from me and not from anybody else.
But do you think, Anthony, that your own addiction gave you some insight that someone without that experience, you were able to talk to them in ways that they maybe if you hadn't been addicted, you wouldn't have known how to really get to them?
Well, I could see it, absolutely. I could see when certain patterns were starting to develop. I could see the certain kind of people that they were starting to hang out with,
Okay.
you know, and so I tried to get them away from or create other opportunities of activities. I was like, let's go do this instead of you having this time to be over here, you know, because I wasn't the type of parent that let his kids go over everybody's house. You know, you had to have an interview. There had to be an interview process.
Yes, sir.
I need to know who your parents are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's going on. I had to know them for a while. Listen, y'all can come to my house. That's why I bought it. You know, come to my house. Y'all can go in the basement. They had all the video. They had all that stuff. You know, I mean, I'd rather you be here where I can see what's going on, because once you get over there, I don't know what's going on over there, because I know what I'm going to do while my kids are in my house. But it did help me because I could see when it was coming. But the crazy thing was, in the one son, I couldn't stop it. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And that right there bothered me, because I did my best. I did my best to keep you from that. You were in every football camp. You were in every basketball camp. I was there. You know, all this stuff that I did, I thought for sure we're not going to go in that direction. I could see something else happening maybe, but not that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And those of us with young kids, I can see my children, especially my daughter, has that daredevil, fearless side.
Okay.
I gotta watch them jokers like a hawk, because next thing you know, they jumping off the. I mean, and trying to guide that side of me that's willing to take chances, to teach them how to be responsible with those chances. You know, I'm not the one that's kind of walk in. Let's jump into the deep end of the pool and learn how to swim. not let's walk our way in. And they have that thing. Their mom is a little more diplomatic, a little more cautious. Them jokers, they like, and I'm like, that's too much of me in there. Let's work around that and teach you to be a little more cautious.
He was a risk taker.
A risk taker, yeah. A little bit more. It's more control. It's a lot more controlled now. Praise the Lord. But and I can see that in them.
He's a nicer version of himself now.
This is true. I learned.
Is that how you say that? Right?
Yeah, right.
A nicer version.
Right. I put myself on the altar to be sacrificed in some way. But learning how to guide your young children.
Yeah.
To it's funny how they learn. So I remember one time when Julian was learning how to lift himself up, he grabbed onto the table, his hand slipped, and he hit his head on the side of the table. And after, do all that stuff, I love kids because he went back and tried it again. And I watched him learn something about he's a little over 1 year old. He grabbed the side of the table and he actually used caution and made sure his hand was sturdy. And I watched him to see what he would do.
Mm-hmm.
And he pulled himself up. And I'm like, how is this kid, 1 year old, some change, learn that lesson that fast? That number one, I messed up the first time, it hurt me, but I'm going to try it again.
Mm-hmm.
But this time I'm going to try it with more wisdom. And most adults don't learn that lesson. And we've been around for 30, 40 plus 50 years. But it just amazes me how kids at that young age can be steered as you guide them through their experiences. So it's just interesting.
Yeah.
They're more instinctive
at
that age. Yeah. They're more adaptable.
Right.
It's just, you watch them figure stuff out. Like it's my grandkids, I don't know when they learned all this, iPad, game, but they taught it to themselves.
Yes.
And I don't know how you get into a playpen, grab a device, and know to do this to get it to move. I'm sitting there like, is that how you do that?
Yeah. It's interesting. Man, it's almost an hour. We got to do a part 2. We didn't even get through 3 other things that we were supposed to talk about. But
I think this stuff will help people.
This will help. Yeah, maybe we can do a part 2 and finish up. But is there anything, Bishop, you can share with the fathers and any of you guys to share with the fathers, just to encourage them on this Father's Day? Anything from your heart?
I think that it is probably one of the greatest assignments that a man can accept and a man can attempt to fulfill. I think that without the Word of God, it is almost impossible to do it in a good way. And I believe that as a father, you have to set a standard, and that you want to make sure that your children can never be able to say you didn't school them, you didn't tell them, you didn't try to help them. If they do their own thing, you don't have to take blame if you've done the best that you possibly could have done at the time. When I say best, I'm not talking about just providing shoes and underwear and suits and stuff. I'm talking about having had conversations, having worked them through issues, having helped them achieve, pick them up when they failed. I mean, all those things. If you know you've done that, then you're trying to be the best father you can be. But it's more than gestures, more than intentions. Yeah. And those of you that are separated from the mothers, do not use that as an excuse to become detached from your children.
Yeah.
Find a way to be in their lives as much as possible. Because a father's presence is really important to a developing child.
Yeah.
And it actually is important to a grown child.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's a phenomenal assignment, a lot of responsibility, and it's a never-ending job.
Yeah. And
the misconception that when they get 18 or 21, you're done. No, ma'am, no, sir. End of the day, you're still going to be dad.
Yep. George, you got anything you want to share?
Yeah, I know that we'll, if there's a part 2, we'll go into this part, but the spiritual father part is so important. I'm very grateful for Bishop in my life that has helped me to navigate key points in my life that my father, biological father, wasn't able to help me navigate, even down to the death of my father. That was, just a few years ago, a really key time that I've had with Bishop to just navigate that. So to the point of being the best assignment or one of the most crucial assignment, there's also constant on the job training. And if you are open, there's people who will help you and teach you and guide you, but you gotta be open and vulnerable enough to say, I need somebody else to help me. And Bishop has done that for me in numerous times, and I've learned even in this conversation and even in other situations. So that'll be my message to any father out there. You don't got to figure it out on your own, because you will fail. But if you allow the multitude of counselors to be there for you, you'll find all the things that you need.
Bishop Anthony?
I would say to fathers, keep going until you find your niche. You got to find out what works for you and what works in different scenarios. Don't give up. Don't give up, regardless of the scenarios or the different challenges that we face with our kids. And once again, I don't think there's any perfect fathers. There's not a perfect father. It's just a father that continues to be a father. So just continue to be a father. And I agree with George that, a spiritual father is so important. You know what I mean? At 50 some years old, I still needed a spiritual father, and that's important.
Yeah. And I'll just say this, excuse me, as we go into our close. I think God put Adam in the garden for a good reason. The garden needed Adam, and Adam needed the garden. Your children, it's weird how your children need you, and in some aspects you need your children. Let the pressure develop you. Let the pressure grow you. Because like everybody's saying, there's no perfect father. We're all continuing to evolve as fathers.
Yeah.
The father I am today is a lot more mature than the father I was.
You cut yourself off for that one. I mean, come on.
I did walk into that one. I walked right into that one.
And I'm not by myself. That's good.
Right,
That's good.
Right.
You get hit
I'm
too.
here.
It's all
Not
good.
me.
Right. As I was 7 years ago. My son will be 8 this year, but
Is he?
He'll be 8 in November.
Wow.
Yeah. And each child brings something different out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, let it happen, and you grow, and you'll grow as you parent. But just stay encouraged. It can be a difficult job, but you got it though. And maybe next time we come back, we'll talk about the spiritual father part.
Yeah.
I start talking about Bishop right now, I might start crying. So I didn't have the loving man outwardly like you all talked about growing up. My grandfather was a loving guy, but he was that old school World War II kind of, stern.
Yeah.
The older he got, the more emotional he became.
Mm-hmm.
And the older I get and more I'm with Bishop, the more that emotional side is starting to come out more. So I learned a lot in this panel. Our relationship is continuing to grow. And I love him, of course. I hope he knows
No doubt.
Right. And I love y'all too. But maybe we can talk about that spiritual fatherhood thing the next time. And then talk about God as the faithful and perfect father. At the end of the day, he is the perfect and faithful father of every single one of us.
Yeah, man.
And Jesus did come, and the thing he talked about most about God was that he was the Father.
Yeah.
And as they say, the sons, the heart to the Father, Father to the sons. And that's what Jesus came to do, to connect us back to that sonship with the Father. So we hope you guys enjoy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Y'all that's watching, take care of your father if he's still alive. If your father passed on, we're praying for you. If you're struggling with the absence of a father, we're praying for you also. We hope you enjoy all the videos today. Bishop's going to be doing a couple on those who are struggling with this day. Those of us like me whose grandfather stepped in is not here. Hard day. We're just going to continue to pray for you guys, and we want to celebrate everybody.
Yeah.
So y'all stay tuned for some more videos. We love y'all. We appreciate you.